Before the engines fired at Rockingham Speedway, Kyle Petty had already delivered his verdict on Cleetus McFarland. Standing at the microphone, one of the most recognized names in NASCAR history looked into the camera and said exactly what he thought. "Don't come here if all you are is an internet sensation." That was the standard he set. That was the line drawn in the dirt. And 250 laps later, Petty sat in that same broadcast booth and was forced to swallow every single word he had spoken before the green flag dropped. That reversal, live, on air, unscripted, is the story of Rockingham. Not the finishing position, not the lap times. The story is that a NASCAR legend publicly dismissed a YouTuber before the race, and then publicly credited him after it. What happened between those two moments is worth examining in full, because the truth of this weekend is more complicated than either side wants to admit. Kyle Petty's argument was not rooted in personal animosity. It was rooted in a principle that much of the NASCAR establishment shares. The sport should reward merit, not social media metrics. The developmental ladder, ARCA, the Truck Series, the Xfinity Series, exists to filter out drivers before they reach tracks where inexperience becomes dangerous. Handing an opportunity to someone because of their YouTube subscriber count, in Petty's view, bypassed the entire system that protects both drivers and the integrity of competition. He was not the only one saying it. Kyle Busch also publicly questioned the decision to give Cleetus McFarland a start in the O'Reilly Auto Parts series. And when you examine McFarland's resume at the time, the skepticism had a factual foundation. He had completed just 4 to 5 ARCA starts before this weekend. His one NASCAR Truck Series appearance, at Daytona, ended in a self-inflicted spin just 6 laps into the race. That was the full extent of his NASCAR-sanctioned experience going into Rockingham. Traditional fans and industry insiders largely sided with Petty. The developmental pipeline is not bureaucratic red tape. It is a structure designed to ensure that drivers competing at higher levels have earned their place through demonstrated racecraft. The system is not perfect, but it exists for real reasons. There is, however, one counter-argument that followed Petty into every interview. Petty himself entered a Cup car at age 18 with essentially zero formal developmental experience by modern standards. That fact did not change his position, but it was noted widely, and it added a layer of complexity to his pre-race stance that even his supporters could not fully dismiss. What most people watching from home did not fully register is that Cleetus McFarland did not arrive at Rockingham for one race. He ran double duty, competing in the ARCA Menard Series East first, before taking on the O'Reilly Series later that same afternoon. The morning result, 4 in the number 30, his first top 5 finish in any NASCAR-sanctioned event. It was not a chaotic run or a lucky result. It was a clean, composed race that ended with McFarland inside the top 5. Afterward, he dedicated the finish to Greg Biffle, saying he turned left for Greg. That was a genuine emotional moment, and it landed differently on a crowd that had spent the morning wondering whether he belonged on the property at all. The significance of that 4 went beyond the result itself. It gave McFarland credibility heading into the main event. It gave his supporters something concrete to point at. And critically, it gave even the skeptics a reason to watch the afternoon race with slightly more open minds. Before the O'Reilly Series start, Dale Earnhardt Jr. offered McFarland a piece of advice that was as simple as it was precise. Stay out of the news. Don't try hero stuff. Just run laps and learn. That was the bar. Not a top 10, not a points finish. Complete laps, stay clean, and don't create problems for the drivers around you. The race was not clean. There is no honest version of this story where it was. Lap 4, McFarland went 3 wide into turn 1, the car slid sideways, and he somehow kept it off the wall. It was a remarkable save in terms of car control, but it immediately cost him ground and signaled that the pace of the field was going to be a serious challenge all afternoon. Lap 49, Blake Lothian spun directly in front of him, and McFarland dove to the apron, missing the spinning car by what appeared to be inches. Both moments revealed instinct. Neither revealed control at the level required to compete at the front of this field. By the end of Stage 2, McFarland was P33 and 2 laps down. A pit road speeding penalty added to an already deteriorating situation. Then came lap 206. A full spin in turn 3, the car sliding back into traffic. It was the 7th caution of the day, and it came directly from his car. The final result? P32.6, laps down to race winner William Sawalich. On paper, that result is difficult to defend. The pace was rough throughout. The penalty was avoidable. The spin on lap 206 was a self-inflicted wound at a point in the race where he had been managing to survive. McFarland did not offer any excuses. Post-race, his assessment was direct. This race kicked my butt, but I finished, and that was the goal. He acknowledged that he had briefly climbed to P26 during a stint, then immediately overdid the next corner and spun out of what he described as excitement. He said the day felt like he spun out 50 times and almost died 10 times. But the car was intact when it crossed the finish line. That self-awareness matters. There was no claim of a moral victory, no reframing of the result as something it was not. There was also genuine learning happening in real time. McFarland spent a portion of the race following Jesse Love's lines through the corners and realized mid-race that his entire corner approach had been wrong all day. That kind of in-race adjustment, identifying a problem, finding a reference point, and attempting to correct, is not a small thing. It is the difference between someone who is simply enduring a race and someone who is actively trying to improve within it. But the number that reframed the entire day was not his finishing position. It was 250. He completed every lap. The car came back undamaged. He did not collect another driver. He did not trigger a multi-car incident. He did not DNF. In a race that generated 7 cautions and ended the days of faster, more experienced competitors, Cleetus McFarland was still running when the checkered flag fell. When the race ended, Kyle Petty did something that very few people in his position would do. He reversed himself completely, on live television, without qualification, and without being prompted. If you're going to criticize, you've got to give credit, Petty said on air. And then he gave it. His full assessment was specific. Cleetus ran every lap, didn't tear anything up, didn't get in anybody's way. That's what he needed to do to shut up guys like me. Then came the line that closed the conversation. He smacked me in the face and shut my mouth. That was not a press release. That was not a carefully worded statement issued hours after the event. That was a live, on-air reversal from one of NASCAR's most prominent voices, delivered from the same booth where he had dismissed McFarland before the race began. The standard Petty had set publicly was met, and Petty acknowledged it publicly. That sequence matters. The response from within the garage was measured, but it was real. Justin Allgaier, the 2024 O'Reilly Series champion, said McFarland did a great job, put in the effort, did exactly what he needed to do, and stated he had no problem racing alongside him on the track. That is a meaningful endorsement. Allgaier is one of the most respected voices in the series, and he is not someone known for handing out compliments for the sake of public relations. Mark Martin called Rockingham a tremendous challenge and said McFarland's driving instincts saved the car in several moments where other drivers would have put it into the wall. Martin was also honest about the gap that still exists. There are a lot of fine details to master before this translates into competitive results. Nobody in the garage was framing this as a breakout performance. The praise from veterans was specifically about survival and respect, not lap times or finishing position. From the team side, RCR VP Danny Lawrence delivered the most grounded assessment of the weekend. We need to be better. No sugarcoating, no managing of optics. The team acknowledged that their own execution fell short of where it needed to be, and that accountability was stated plainly. Post-race, Cleetus McFarland joked that the volume of internet criticism had nearly made him quit, and then immediately followed it with, "Psych, see you at Talladega." The crowd reaction was predictable, but the actual situation is more complicated than that punchline. McFarland was not approved for Talladega following Rockingham. His next confirmed start is at Nashville in the number 33 RCR Chevrolet. According to Danny Lawrence, NASCAR may require at least one additional race before clearing him for superspeedway competition, in part because no live pit stop sequence was completed during the Rockingham event. Talladega in October and Daytona in August remain on the schedule under the RCR deal, but both are contingent on receiving that approval. This is the actual next chapter. Not hype, not social media reaction. The question of whether McFarland can meet the specific operational benchmarks that NASCAR requires before putting him on a track where the consequences of inexperience are measured in hospital visits, not lap times. The weekend at Rockingham opened with a NASCAR legend telling a YouTuber he had no business being on that racetrack. It closed with that same legend on live television, saying he had to stop talking and give the man credit. P32.6 laps down. That is what the results sheet records. But the results sheet does not record Kyle Petty's on-air reversal. It does not record 250 completed laps, a car returned to the hauler intact, and 0 incidents caused to other competitors. It does not record Justin Allgaier saying he had no issue sharing the track, or Mark Martin acknowledging that McFarland's instincts kept the car out of the wall on multiple occasions. The question that closes this story is the one worth sitting with. Did Kyle Petty actually owe Cleetus McFarland an apology? Or did McFarland only barely do enough to quiet the critics? The answer to that depends entirely on what standard you believe NASCAR should hold. But what is not a matter of debate is that the bar Petty set before the race, run every lap, don't wreck anyone, don't embarrass the sport, was cleared. And Petty, to his credit, said so himself. The Cleetus McFarland story is not over. It is entering a new chapter, one that is no longer about whether he belongs, but about whether he can earn the approval to race at the tracks that demand the most. If you want more honest, unfiltered NASCAR breakdowns like this one, hit like, drop your answer in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens at Nashville. The Cleetus McFarland story is just getting started.